So greetings, my name is Melissa Cunningham. I'm the program manager for CDMRP's Prostate Cancer Research Program. And it's my honor today to participate in the ZERO Summit again this year and to share with you what the PCRP has been doing to support research to address important issues related to prostate cancer patient care. So for those of you that are perhaps attending the summit for the first time and may not have heard about the PCRP before, we are one of 36 different research programs under the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs, or CDMRP, which is actually part of the Department of Defense, specifically under the Department of the Army's Medical Research and Development Command, which has a longstanding history of supporting research that's benefited the warfighter as well as the general civilian population. All programs managed by the Army are relevant to the military, either the active duty or their beneficiaries, including family members of active duty. Those are all part of the military healthcare system. And so all of our programs have military relevance. And to help understand what makes us unique as a funding agency and what has shaped our processes, it really helps to look first at how the very first CDMRP program was created. So the foundation of the CDMRP was established back in 1992 when grassroots advocacy efforts heightened political awareness and increased interest in particular health issues, specifically breast cancer. And after the initial congressional appropriation to create this new breast cancer research program was created in 1992, it was designated to the United States Army. And they sought the advice of the National Academies Institute of Medicine to help us understand the most effective way to manage the review and investment strategies for these new appropriations, since this was a new effort within the Army's Medical Command. And so the result of this advice from the National Academy of Medicine were two recommendations that have become hallmarks of CDMRP programs. That includes a two-tier review process, which I'll speak a little bit more about in a few slides, as well as a new research model that would incorporate consumers into everything that we do, from establishing the program goals, our investment strategy, and helping us to identify the research that's most important for those programs to support. And over the years, our initial and ongoing success has allowed Congress to continue to add additional research programs and topics to the CDMRP portfolio. And so that now today we manage more than 36 different programs and additionally support other core efforts within the DoD. So again, as I mentioned, we now have 36 different programs, which you can see listed here on this slide, which are all dedicated to addressing specific areas as appropriated by Congress and designated by Congress. The majority of our programs are still currently within the fiscal year 2021 program cycle, which is the appropriations that I have listed here. The congressional appropriations in total across all 36 different research programs that will be used to fund new research in FY21 alone totals $1.5 billion. So we're not the only funding agency that supports research for all of those various diseases and conditions that you saw on the previous slide. And as I mentioned during that brief CDMRP history lesson, we were founded on the ideal of approaching the type of research that we fund differently to really target and support different gaps that might not be something that's targeted by other funding agencies. And in part, that's due to the fact that, again, we are funded through the addition of targeted research funds to the DoD budget by Congress. So again, each of our programs, the money that we get that's designated for the Prostate Cancer Research Program is specifically dedicated to funding prostate cancer research and can't be pulled into other areas. In addition, there's some other hallmarks, again, that are a result of how our programs were created and how we continue to look for the new research that we support, such as funding high impact innovation driven research. Again, this is something that is specifically unique about CDMRP and really sets us aside from many other funding agencies, given that we are often willing to potentially take risks to support these very highly innovative ideas that perhaps other research agencies might not be willing to support. Of course, we are very cognizant of the fact that we are not the only funding agency that supports many of these areas, as I've already mentioned. And so we do work very hard and coordinate with other federal funding agencies and private funding agencies to really try and avoid any duplication of research funding and ensure that we're doing our best to perhaps target underfunded or unmet gaps that others may not be currently targeting. Again, we do have this National Academy of Medicine recommended model where we have a two-tier review process that allows us to incorporate the traditional merits of peer review, looking at the scientific merit of the application, as well as a programmatic review level, which really helps us target those important gaps within the portfolio of the program or things that are specific relevance to the patients that we're trying to support. Consumers are extremely important for our programs. We often refer to them as the true north, the important thing that we really want to keep in mind and in everything that we do to ensure that all of the funds that we're investing in these new research ideas are ultimately going to help us consider and evaluate how these research efforts are going to ultimately support and impact the consumers that are not only participating in our processes, but are going to be the recipients of the results of our funded research. And of course, in line with this idea of being innovative and risk-taking, we also want to be flexible to ensure that if things change within the patient and the research community, that we're adapting as nimbly as we can to adjust and revise our visions and investment strategies for each of these programs to ensure that we're rapidly responding as quickly as we can to those changing needs. So the success of CDMRP is based on, again, this unique partnership, as you gathered from these other points, among Congress, the members of the DoD within the program and others in the DoD, the researchers that are conducting the research, and of course the consumers that are playing an important role in helping us identify what we support, as well as the ultimate stakeholders in the research that we're supporting. And so all of those partners play a very important and distinctive role all the way from the initiation of the funds to the guidance of how those should be spent, to managing those research funds within the programs, and of course developing those innovative ideas and products that we hope will be fielded to the patients. And so all of those are working together towards ultimately helping us towards our goal of transforming healthcare through innovative and impactful research. So the role of consumers in CDMRP funded research, I've mentioned that a couple different times by now. And again, as I mentioned, as the true north, we recognize that the consumers, such as you participating in the ZERO Summit, are the reason that our programs exist. And so we're proud and dedicated to include consumers throughout all of our review processes and our program processes, because your voice as representatives of the larger patient community helps us keep the focus on why we exist and do what we do, which is ultimately for the patients. And we're very proud of the fact that we have involved thousands of consumers in our review processes over the years, with more than 500 serving on our peer and programmatic review panels across all the CDMRP programs in 2020 alone. And so I'm hoping that I've already caught the attention of some of you in this virtual audience that might be wondering how you can become involved as a consumer representative for the PCRP, or perhaps for other programs, depending on your life experiences. ZERO has nominated consumers to serve as reviewers for us for many years. And if you're interested in exploring that further, I would encourage you to visit our website and talk to members of the ZERO board to see how you can get more involved with our review processes. So I just wanted to briefly cover, just again, to help you understand that two-tier review process and how it feeds into all of the work that our program does by just kind of briefly going over this program cycle. Just to remind you that, first of all, everything we do starts off with being receiving congressional appropriations. Without funds being designated to the PCRP, we can't start the process of identifying new research to try and help address the gaps that the program feels are most important. But once we find out that we do have new funds available for the current fiscal year, we have a programmatic panel that comes together in what we call a vision setting meeting to help, again, identify and determine those goals that are most important for us to address within that broader prostate cancer research and patient care landscape. We then communicate the types of funding opportunities and the goals that our program is specifically trying to address through different funding opportunity announcements or program announcements, which the researchers then respond to by submitting applications for their ideas of how they can best address those goals within those funding opportunities. And then ultimately those go through a peer review process where, again, we have consumers, scientists, and clinicians on review panels that review those applications and help us identify which ones seem to be most meritorious based on a number of communicated criteria. And then those high scoring applications come back to the programmatic review panel, who's helped set the stage at the beginning of the year in that vision setting meeting, and ultimately help us determine and make recommendations as to which of those applications will best help us address the goals that the program has and will help us make progress towards those and ultimately get those important advancements to patients that we feel are really critical. So for each research program appropriation, again, we do start off with this vision setting meeting, and we really incorporate and consider a number of different important aspects when helping to ultimately determine what the goals of the program will be. The programmatic panel really considers not just any guidance that we get from Congress, but as well as input and guidance from senior leaders and stakeholders, what the current research landscape is, and again, what other funding agencies are currently doing to address prostate cancer research, and how we can perhaps best leverage the funds that we've received from Congress to address the most critical gaps that perhaps other funding agencies aren't specifically addressing within prostate cancer. So this is a summary of the funding history of the Prostate Cancer Research Program since its inception in 1997. And as you can see, we've been very fortunate to be well supported with appropriations from Congress every year since that inaugural year. And we're currently in FY21 at our highest funding level in the program's history at $110 million, again, specifically dedicated for prostate cancer research. And of course, that's in large part thanks to ZERO and many others who have voiced support for the program over the years. To date, we have made more than 3,500 awards, and that doesn't even include the awards that we're still currently on negotiating right now. And the funds that have been used to support those various awards has totaled more than $2 billion since the beginning of the program, again, all dedicated to prostate cancer research. So each year, again, as we decide the best approach to investing those appropriations that we receive from Congress, we start by revisiting our vision and mission, which is the ultimate goal of what we hope to impact through the research that we've been funding. For many years now, our vision has been simple and straightforward: to conquer prostate cancer. And therefore, our mission is to fund research that will lead to the elimination of death from prostate cancer and enhance the well-being of service members, veterans, and all the men and their families who are experiencing the impact of the disease. To help us focus our efforts within that broader vision and mission and help us make the biggest impact possible with the funds that we have available, the program has outlined a strategic plan, which was released back in 2018, that identified specific areas that we're really dedicated and focusing on addressing, again, within that broader prostate cancer landscape of other funding agencies. And this is not to say that there are not other important issues within the prostate cancer research and patient landscape that should be addressed, but simply that these are the areas that the PCRP feels that we can make the biggest impact on with the knowledge or the program's unique strengths. And again, within considering in mind what other agencies are also currently supporting. And if you're interested in reading more about the Prostate Cancer Research Program strategic plan or some other information about the program and some of the achievements that we had made at the time that this was released, you can certainly go to our website. There's a link down there at the bottom of the slide, and it will provide a link directly to the strategic plan. So since the development of that strategic plan in 2018, we've been prioritizing 4 different areas that are challenging the research community that we challenge the research community to address through their research proposals. And we call those our overarching challenges. And while the phrasing of these challenges has been tweaked over the years, the core focus remains the same, which is to better understand the biology and identify new treatments to improve outcomes for men with lethal prostate cancer who are in urgent need of new options. We've also been committed to supporting research that will help improve the quality of life and enhance outcomes for patients who have been negatively impacted by their prostate cancer diagnosis or treatment. And lastly, we continue to be committed to addressing prostate cancer health disparities for all patients who might be disproportionately affected, including different races, ethnic groups, and current and former service members and others. And so to help us address those goals, we continue to offer funding mechanisms that help support both highly innovative ideas that may produce the next landmark discovery or breakthrough, again, in tradition with that hallmark aspect of many CDMRP programs in supporting innovative research, as well as studies that also help prioritize translating promising ideas closer to making a more immediate impact on patients. And as you can see from the investment strategy summary pie chart, our investment in both of those areas of innovation and impact do represent the majority of our portfolio and are fairly evenly distributed among those two different categories. So how are we doing in addressing those goals? Well, the PCRP, again, has been supporting research that's aimed at understanding and resolving disparities in prostate cancer since the beginning of the program. And the research that we funded in those areas has tried to tackle this issue by addressing both the social and biological factors that might be contributing to these disparities. Within the realm of social factors, we have recently supported studies that are trying to understand the financial burden of prostate cancer and its treatment on the quality of life among a diverse patient population. We're also supporting research that's working to develop a care and survivorship model based on lifestyle differences. We also have supported studies that leverage the fact that service members and veterans represent a diverse population that has a more normalized access to care environment compared to the variation among access to care in the general public. And so we have many studies that are also utilizing data and samples from the veteran population to try and investigate differences among different racial or ethnic groups within the veteran community. One study in particular that's ongoing is comparing outcomes between the veteran and non-veteran population regarding the outcomes associated, again, with this access to care. On the other side, we're also tackling potential biological factors that might be contributing to disparities in different patient populations, including the evaluation of the Oncotype's DX diagnostic assay in African Americans who were underrepresented in the original evaluations of this particular assay, to see how the prognosis information provided by that test, which is intended to try and help men identify if they're a good candidate for active surveillance, how it affects the treatment decisions for that particular group of patients. Other studies supported by the PCRP are looking into immunity profiles in African Americans versus Caucasians. And I also wanted to really point out a recent study that started about 6 months ago that's trying to use artificial intelligence to see if machines can learn the differences in lethal prostate cancer by using biopsy samples from veteran prostate cancer patients. If they're able to develop this tool, it could be something that's rapidly deployed through the VA medical system to identify prostate cancer that might become lethal, and to identify that at an earlier stage so that it can be treated more aggressively earlier and hopefully prevent progression. The PCRP also launched a new initiative this past year to try a new approach to addressing both the goal of addressing health disparities as well as the challenge of improving quality of life and patient outcomes by creating a new multi-institutional consortium effort. This Health Equity and Research Outcomes Improvement Consortium, which we termed HEROIC for short, was designed to bring together leaders in the field from multiple institutions to pursue innovative and translational approaches to addressing critical issues in these areas. And one unique aspect of this effort is also the integral involvement of at least one consumer advocate in the consortium team's work. And that individual is intended to represent the perspective of the patient population that's relevant to the team's research, and echoes, again, that hallmark of CDMRP programs to keep our research centered around the patients that we're ultimately trying to impact. The PCRP did recently identify 2 consortium teams through this inaugural release of this particular funding opportunity, whose heroic efforts we will be funding over the next 6 years through 2 different support phases. And more information about those efforts and those teams will become available on the CDMRP website as those awards are finalized and the research efforts get underway. In addition to some of these targeted efforts, the PCRP has also supported many different studies over the years that are continuing to prime the pipeline with new discoveries to try and address, again, those 4 overarching challenges. And we're continuing to support research that's trying to identify those new promising diagnostic and therapeutic interventions. Some of those early discoveries have become widely available and have changed the standard of care for prostate cancer patients, including biomarker assays detecting an aggressive variant of prostate cancer, the ARV7 marker, new imaging agents, and multiple treatments for patients with advanced prostate cancer. And so our program is very proud to have contributed to these advancements and the impact that they have made for many patients. But we also recognize that newer and better treatments are still needed for patients who don't respond well to these available therapies. And so We continue to try and support the early phase clinical testing of novel prostate cancer therapies through our clinical trials consortium, which is called the PCCTC for short. And the program here, our program has continued to support this particular effort, this consortium, which involves institutions all over the United States who collaboratively work together to enroll patients in clinical trials so that these trials can be conducted quickly and get the most promising new treatments to patients faster than might have been possible without this collaboration. Their efforts have successfully enrolled more than 8,400 patients to more than 223 clinical trials for prostate cancer in the past 16 years. And the results of those studies have moved not just 21 agents to phase 3 testing, but has also resulted in the FDA approval of some of the most notable new treatments in prostate cancer over the past 10 years, including abiraterone, enzalutamide, apalutamide, rucaparib, and radium-223. This particular effort is also committed as well to supporting the Prostate Cancer Research Program's effort to, again, address disparities by including minorities and veterans in prostate cancer clinical trials through this particular collaboration, and are involved in many other collaborative efforts that are continuing to change clinical practice across the prostate cancer research landscape. So I hope you were all able to take something away from this presentation today, something new about the advancements our program has supported or the ongoing studies that we hope will be able to impact patients in the not too distant future. But of course, with the limited time that I had, this is only a sampling of the different research efforts that the PCRP is currently supporting. We regularly communicate new research developments on our website, and you can see a sampling of those web highlights here. In addition, and keeping the patient-centric focus of our program, we like to also share the personal stories of many of the men who are dedicated to helping the PCRP and helping not only to shape our efforts, but of course the efforts of the prostate cancer patient community that they are integrally involved in. And you can see two of those recent consumer stories that we've featured in the middle of this particular slide. In fact, we're going to be releasing a new consumer story for one of ZERO's own survivors during the time of the summit. So I hope you will take a moment to head over to our website and check out his personal story as well. You can also keep up to date with these news releases and other research highlights by going to the CDMRP website and subscribing to our program communications. Let's see if I can get it to. Thought there was gonna be a little red box that popped up there, but it doesn't look like it. If you look at the bottom left-hand corner of the slide here, there's that little envelope that says subscribe to funding opportunities and program communications. That's one way that you can keep up to date with new information from the PCRP. You can also go at the top right-hand corner to our social media connections through Twitter or Facebook, whatever interests you, and again, follow information and updates about the PCRP or other research programs at CDMRP. And again, I hope I've also inspired some of you to consider participating as a consumer reviewer in our review panels. And again, you can find information about how to start that process on our website as well, or reach out to your points of contact at the ZERO organization, and they'll be happy to help support your nomination process. So I want to again conclude by thanking ZERO for inviting me to share this information with you, and for all that ZERO's community does to help support prostate cancer patients and for helping to fight this important battle against prostate cancer.
Hello. The Prostate Cancer Research Program is an amazing source for funding for new treatments and diagnostic tools to help patients. We're fighting this year to increase the funding for this critical program to $120 million. As Dr. Cunningham just mentioned, the Prostate Cancer Research Program has a unique consumer reviewer component to its grants process. That means it empowers prostate cancer patients and survivors to actively participate in the review process to help determine which medical institutions get funding for prostate cancer related projects. I'm joined today by ZERO champions Patrick Bingham, David Piper, Paul Neinfeld, and Tom Hulsey. All of these gentlemen have had the opportunity to participate in the program as consumer reviewers. And I want to make two important points today. First, it's critical to have more patients get involved in this program. And two, to be able to make an impact in the process, in the progress of prostate cancer research can be part of the healing process for battling the disease. So I get the chance today to have a conversation with these gentlemen and for you to hear from them about how the process goes as a consumer reviewer and what they got out of it. So I'm going to start with a question. First of all, welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Welcome.
And let's start with just the basics. Why did you decide to participate as a reviewer? David, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, it was about 4 years ago when I was at the summit, and there was an individual there looking for people to sign up for the consumer reviewer. And I thought, once again, it gives me the opportunity of somebody who's been through the process of prostate cancer to maybe give something back to the program. Maybe my little insight or my little experience can be beneficial when it comes to researching grants and funding of the type of research that we're all looking for.
And Paul, this was your first year as a reviewer. Why did you get involved?
Because you asked me. No, I'm fairly new to ZERO. I was diagnosed pretty young. I was only 44 when I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, just 2 years out from my surgery. And so I really, threw myself into ZERO, and I kind of told you, Ali, hey, whatever you need me for, please, tap me on the shoulder, because ZERO has been so helpful to me in my journey. And like David said, I wasn't really even familiar with the program. So when you told me about it, Ali, it sounded like something that really could add a lot of value back to the patient community. I think it's a really unique program. I wasn't aware of anything similar to it. And just to represent all the men and their families was a real honor to me. So I didn't hesitate. I said yes.
Great. And Tom, you have, to say you've been involved with ZERO for a while is an understatement. But you've also been a consumer reviewer more than once too. Why did you decide to participate?
Well, I was diagnosed in 2015. And prior to my own diagnosis, I had witnessed one of my best friends lose his life to prostate cancer. And it was absolutely gut-wrenching to watch him. And subsequently, I have watched and have become friends with other men that are part of this reluctant brotherhood that have lost their lives or have really suffered. And after I was able to conquer prostate cancer, I wanted to do something to really make a difference and pay it forward. And I found the PCRP through ZERO, through social media, and it looked like a program that was really very beneficial. And of course, the vision of the PCRP is to eliminate prostate cancer and to enhance the lives of men and their families that are dealing with prostate cancers.
Thanks, Tom. Patrick, you're another first timer, and because you asked me has already been taken. So why did you get involved?
You must have been reading my mind, because I guess I became familiar with it because of you and Tracy Kreitz asking me about it, and I was not familiar. I've been doing a lot from the standpoint of advocacy, but once I became familiar with it, it seemed like a natural progression of going from an advocacy standpoint to that one step further. And in my instance, one, being a military veteran, but also being an African-American male, two of the categories that are, I guess, represented a higher rate in prostate cancer. It was a natural fit, particularly as a prostate cancer survivor. I wanted to do more, and this was just an opportunity to basically do more from that standpoint of understanding how this process worked, understanding what went into it, and then just making sure that I could learn and basically continue to educate others.
Thank you. And I'm going to pause for a second, because what I learned here is all I have to do to get more consumer reviewers to nominate is ask. So anyone who's watching, please, I'm asking. We do need new consumer reviewers for 2022. And just so those people have an idea of what to expect, what kind of time commitment is it? What does it take from you to do this? I know with COVID, people haven't been traveling for panels, but it's still, there are meetings, there's a lot of time that goes into this. So David, do you want to jump in here?
So time commitment, I think that's going to depend on the individual when it comes to reviewing the studies. Our job was to look at the lay abstract and maybe the first page of the study and read through it and then give our consumer kind of take on the study. Now, when you did that, sometimes some of the stuff was so advanced that you had to do more research into it to find out what it was. So to tell you the truth, I don't know how many hours it took me when it came to reading all those and my preliminary reports. it was 2 days of Zoom meetings when we had them. They were enjoyable. They went fast for me. It was an amazing thing. Like Tom mentioned, it was such an honor to be part of this and to be able to give the input from a consumer to some of the scientific reviewers, I think gave them perspective too. So I wish I could have kept track of the hours I put into it. I can't recall, to be honest with you. And so it didn't seem like it was too much, but it probably was a lot.
I'll ask one of our first timers then. Paul, it was a first time for you, so I'm thinking that you probably paid a little more attention to how much time it took.
It was a lot. I'm not going to lie. It was, so I have several degrees, but none of them are medical. So, as David touched upon, sometimes you're encountering terms with which you might be not familiar, and that requires you to, take a little more time to research that, because I think I speak for all four of us here. When you are tapped to do this, you take it seriously. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal to represent the community and participate in this. So I know I took it very seriously. I probably put 15 to 20 hours in before the meetings, just reading over. I kind of fell down the trap that I got too deep, and then I realized, again, I don't have to be a medical doctor to understand this. I just need to look at it from the perspective of the patient community. And again, always looking through the lens of how is this going to impact, as Tom said, the brotherhood? How is it going to impact other men who might, benefit from a treatment they're talking about, or some type of research they're talking about? So probably 20 hours of preliminary work, then the 2 full days of Zoom meetings, and reiterating what David said, everybody was great. It was an amazing group, very engaged, and I really was I'm not going to say surprised, but it was really great how seriously they took my perspective along with the other patient reviewer. I didn't feel like they in any way minimized that I didn't understand everything they were talking about. When I had the floor, so to speak, the virtual floor, I really felt that everybody's engaged and treated my opinion with great respect.
Thanks. And Tom, is that consistent with, you would say, the time commitment in previous years, back in the day when it was in person, since it may yet be again?
I would agree with David, and I'm not sure that I can give you an exact number because I always like to really dive deep into the different applications. As David said, you just really had to really focus on the lay abstract. I like to look at the technical abstract and the impact and a lot of the other components of the application. So it is a pretty good commitment. And to answer your question, Ollie, I've done both the in-person and virtual several times. And one of the things I really liked about the in-person is the one-on-one interaction you had with the scientists and the doctors that were there. And you don't have that in the virtual. So I think really for the virtual, there might be a little bit more homework, if you will, to get ready for the panel. So.
Okay. Well, I don't know whether to hope. On the bright side, it's nice that you get to do it from home, right? But I don't know if I would hope that that's how it happens again next year.
I mean, it's really great to have that one-on-one interaction with the scientists and all. You learn so much, and through that I've built lifelong relationships with some of those folks and all, and it's just again just a very rewarding experience, and you don't quite get that maybe in the virtual, but like you say, hopefully we'll be back there one of these days,
sooner or later.
If I can add, I'd like to agree with Tom on that. My first was 3 years ago, was live, and there was a distinct camaraderie you got in your group when you were in your room with the scientific reviewers. Doing it virtually, you kind of lose some of that. I would have to agree. I mean, I felt closer to the people when we were one-on-one or we were all together in real life as opposed to virtual.
It also, if I may add, it also helps with the intimidation factor, because I know the first time you do it, it can be rather intimidating. Because I remember the first panel that I walked into, everybody on the panel had you know, on their name tents, they had all these initials after their names, PhD, MD, and everything else. And I don't have that. And so again, I think being able to have that one-on interaction with all of them, it really does help, and it helps ease that intimidation factor, if you will. And like it's already been mentioned, your voice counts. You're really there to be the voice of the patient community, and they do listen to you.
I want to ask not just about the time commitment, but Patrick, I know that you also have a couple of degrees here, but they also aren't medical degrees for what it's worth. And I imagine there's a little bit of a learning curve. And as a first timer, what is it like? How do they help you get caught up and be prepared to go in and make recommendations and share your thoughts about the proposals?
Well, I think that the big thing that stood out to me was basically being assigned a mentor person who you could go to. And so I was able to reach out to a mentor to basically kind of talk through the process. We ended up, talking on the phone a few times prior to going in place and everything, but also we had to happen to have a central Texas, Oklahoma region. And Tom had reached out and said, if I needed something, hey, he's willing to basically offer up any advice he could. And so that was the big thing, knowing there's a support system in place. And I guess critical to that was, as I was starting to read through and I'd come up with things, and a few times it was late in the evening and I would send an email out and I would get responses back from people involved with the process, the program, as far as, and I'm thinking, what are they still doing up? Or I sent one, I know it was like late on a Friday night as I was going through the preliminary type portion. And when I got the next morning, I could see where I had gotten a response back at like 3 o'clock in the morning. So I'm thinking, these people, are they not sleeping? But they were there, and I think it really helped. And just going back and forth with the email process, but also having the ability as you go through and start reading and thinking of your input and being able to submit kind of your initial type critiques for people to look at and give you advice on, hey, you might want to add that this looks good. And I think critical for me was I might have been like others where the first timer wanted to make sure that I was very meticulous and very thorough as I went through. And so I probably spent a lot more time than I normally would reading something, but then with the standpoint of wanting to make sure I was doing it properly, doing it right from the standpoint of the significance of looking at work that could have just, large scale ramifications on how we treat cancer, how we treat prostate cancer. And so for me, that was just the thing that I took the most out of, was knowing that, hey, there's a support group behind me. I'm reading this, but I'm not by myself. If I have questions, I was afraid of thinking, God, I have bachelor's, master's, doctorate, but it was different. But then also understanding as I got a little more comfortable, I became a little less apprehensive about, okay, I read through the lay portion, but let me take a glimpse as to what was in the technical abstract and being able to connect more of the dots, and then knowing that on the other end, when we talked in open forum, that the individuals that were out there, the ones that were the technical experts, is that there wasn't any sort of sense of looking down, but as the others said, I think it probably would help if you could be there non-virtually, but there's that kind of that, call it affirmation you get from being in the same room with people. And so they can sit there and you kind of guide yourself from some of those nonverbal cues and those kind of the nods and things, that, hey, we like what you're saying, or you can understand their take as well. And so I think the critical thing was just being able to know that, hey, it's a lot of information to read, but as a first timer, people know you're a first timer, but they still valued what you had to say.
That's great. And obviously we know that the other reviewers in the room have all the scientific and medical knowledge that they might have at their fingertips, but what they don't have is the lived experience with prostate cancer, right? So it's a unique perspective. I want to ask each of you, what did you learn from the process? What stuck out at you? And what I really want to know is, was there anything really cool in your proposals that you just are dying to hint at, since I know you all have confidentiality agreements and cannot talk about the specifics of your proposals? David, how about you?
One of the things that I found that to me made me the most happy is that obviously the four of us are very passionate about prostate cancer and dealing with prostate cancer and helping men with their journey with prostate cancer. What I found is all these scientific reviewers, these people that are doing the research, they're just as passionate. I mean, they have focused their attention on this minute little aspect of treating prostate cancer with passion and with veracity that I could only hope to do. So to me, that impressed me more than anything, that these people were really, they're into it too. And they may not have had the personal experience of having prostate cancer, but they're in the fight 100%. When it comes to what was really cool, there were so many really cool things. And I think that's one of the things that I got caught up with, because as a reviewer, I would read these abstracts and I would go, wow, now that's cool. I really hope that turns out to be the way to go, because if that works, boy, is that going to be a great step for the next process that we go through? Or will this be something that we can leapfrog this? Or, wow, what a great diagnostic tool. And I mean, there's just so many things that they're you know, that term, the moonshot, well, it's kind of like a moonshot, some of these things. And this is high level science that they're talking, and it's pretty cool stuff. That's all I could say. And that is, as a general dentist, I've got a little bit of that kind of background, and it was like, I got all geeked up over it. So yeah, I was excited the whole time.
That's great. Paul, what about you?
Yeah, unfortunately, like you said, Ali, we can't talk about any of the specific proposals, but it was really amazing to me. One of the things I thought was kind of neat was there's a portion of it where they're funding young researchers, right? There's a very specific, I forget the name of it, maybe Tom or David or Patrick remembers. But to see some of these young scientists try to take their career in that direction, you know, like David said, there's so much passion in the community. Just because they didn't suffer from prostate cancer, or they may or may not have known somebody who had, it doesn't mean that they're any less passionate to try to find a cure. I mean, they're dedicating their careers to it. So to see that portion of the discussion going towards, you know, research funding towards people who are younger in their career, earlier in their career, I was really heartened by that. You know, to see that there's a pipeline of young researchers from around the world that want to dedicate their careers to this. And, you know, like David said, there were just some really neat things. I mean, really from, you know, the top organizations in the world, you know, any of the top research facilities, hospitals, and universities that you can name, you know, we were getting proposals from them. And it was pretty impressive. I was pretty wowed by a lot of it.
So nice and discreet, but exciting. I like it. How about you, Tom?
Well, I concur with everything David and Paul have said. The PCRP, when you evaluate applications, you're looking at it, how it addresses typically four overarching principles when it comes to prostate cancer. And one that has really stuck out to me is addressing racial inequalities and all in healthcare and in prostate cancer, and they really are taking that to heart. And this is one of the overarching principles of the PCRP. And of course, this goes for any health issues, though, and this is something that has to be addressed if we're going to overcome and find a cure for prostate cancer. And to answer your question, is anything really cool? Yes, like David said, some of these applications, the diagnostics and everything, some of them are, if they come to fruition, you know, they to think that, you know, we had a part in that, it would just be very gratifying. So
You could have been one of the guys who reviewed the proposal that cured cancer, right?
Absolutely.
That's big. How about you, Patrick?
Well, just to go back and reiterate what the others have said, particularly when Tom talked about those overarching principles that they address, particularly when it comes to, you know, minorities, underrepresented, overrepresented population when it comes to prostate cancer. I guess as I went through, it's almost like being and maybe I'm hungry or something, but almost like that kid in the candy shop or the Krispy Kreme donut shop, and you see all these different items out there, and they all have so much tremendous merit and appeal to them. And so going through, it was like just thinking of all of the research that has gone into that, and the proposals, as David had mentioned. You talk about some of the younger individuals that are out there that really, I mean, if they haven't been affected, you wonder why they don't have no real skin in the game, but look at what they're doing and how passionate they are. And so, out there that there are people that are doing, doctors, research, that are doing basically things that I wouldn't have imagined the process of what they go through, and looking at the things that they're saying. And many of the proposals, I was thinking like, yeah, I wish that was around when I was going through things to that extent of, yeah, that's another great one there. But knowing that there's those limited funds. And so for me, it's a famous thing of, yes, if I get a chance to tell our elected officials, we need more funding because there's so many valuable things out there. That's one of the things that just really stood out, was just the tremendous amount of effort and talent that's going there, both from the consumer reviewer standpoint, from the technical reviewers, from the doctors and the research, from the proposal things, just a tremendous amount of talent that's looking in that. And like you were mentioning with Tom, and you said that, hey, just the fact that you could say, hey, one day I might have been the person that was on, that cutting edge of this breakthrough.
And I think it's safe to say that if folks are frustrated that you're saying these things are so cool and they're so amazing, but you're not giving any detail, the way they get detail is by volunteering to be a consumer reviewer.
Yes.
Right? That's the way you do it.
May I say one more thing, Allie?
Please.
To piggyback too on what Patrick was saying when we were talking about the racial inequalities and all, it's very important from the PCRP to have a wide variation of representation in consumer reviewers, and they need more minority groups represented in that consumer reviewer base, specifically African-American men.
And veterans.
Definitely.
And veterans, yeah.
Yep. African-American men, veterans. I think they also like to have a variety of treatment types, right? People who've had different prostate cancer experiences.
Different experiences, yeah.
They can fill those panels and review those proposals. Well, I want to ask one last question before we wrap up. And it's a two-parter, of course. Would you do it again, and why? And we'll kick off with David.
Absolutely. I'd be honored to be asked to do it again. It's a pleasure. The amount of time that I put into it, to me, is worth every little bit. The excitement I get being a little bit of a part of something for the betterment of all is so rewarding. When I was diagnosed back in 2010, my big thing is if I made it to 5 years, I wanted to do something special, and I got a chance to do that. And the biggest thing is I wanted to prove that, getting prostate cancer doesn't slow you down. It doesn't stop things. And I want to make sure that we as a group of men that are going through this journey, that we can do what we can to help not only the men that are suffering now, but, those that are going to suffer in the future, and for our children and our children's children. And this is just one way to do it. So absolutely, I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Well, first time you're coming back.
Absolutely. I believe Melissa's already got me signed up, and I don't remember who it was who mentioned this, but I just want to reiterate that the support staff, from, the full-time employees who worked on this, they're amazing. It was Patrick who actually mentioned, it didn't matter what time I sent an email to Melissa, and I believe she's on the East Coast in the DC area, she'd respond back to me, and so they're also passionate about it. So not only, the volunteer scientists, the volunteer consumer reviewers, but the staff themselves. I never got the impression that it was, just a job to them. They are very passionate about it also. So yeah, I'm absolutely going to do it. And if we can end this club that nobody wants to be a member of, and we can play some part in that, I love all you guys, but it's a brotherhood that shouldn't be, right? We need to find a cure, and we need to find better treatments.
Yeah. Tom, you've done it a couple of times. You ready to call it quits?
No, not at all. It's been such an honor to be part of this impactful program, and I have done it multiple times. And if they'll have me back, absolutely, I would love to do it. I love being, being able to share my lived experience and being the voice of patients. And just one other thing I'll add too, it's very interesting, being an advocate for ZERO, for that funding that we do. You see how it goes hand in hand with the PCRP. They both need each other, and it's really neat to be, again, see it from both sides, if you will. And but yes, I would do it again.
Excellent. I'm sure they'll be calling then. Patrick.
Yeah, okay, without hesitation, yes. It's something that's near and dear to me as a prostate cancer survivor diagnosed at mid-40s, and as I tell people, I really had no idea, other than getting the prostate cancer check, what a prostate cancer, what it was even. And so when it happened, it was like I have to educate myself, and just the experience of going through for something particular, I would call it bigger than me, as far as being able to do something that has an impact for so many. We're not just talking about men, but for their families.
Yes.
Because everyone, once the gentleman's diagnosed with prostate cancer, it affects everyone around them, their spouses, their significant others, their family, their friends. It had this impact that the research that's going on, I just have just an abundant amount of respect for everything that goes on and why we do what we do with ZERO Prostate.
Thank you. I mean, thank you all, first of all, for serving as reviewers, right? For giving back to prostate cancer research, for talking today. You've certainly made me want to be a reviewer if I were eligible. So I'm sure I'm not the only one. And I want to go ahead and just say to the folks who are watching, you can be a reviewer too. All you have to do is reach out to me, Ali, that's ALI, at zerocancer.org, and let me know, and we will help you through the nomination process. And both Patrick and Paul last year were just watching this session online for the summit, and this year they get to be in the session. So this could be you. You could be one of these faces in these squares 1 year from now.
Yeah.
We're in
Very
person.
glamorous.
Okay. Yes.
This is kind of like Hollywood squares, right?
I was ready to say,
Exactly.
yeah, we're stars.
Thrilling Hollywood squares, and you can just picture your face right here.
There we go.
Yeah.
So thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. And do look for information about the Prostate Cancer Research Program at zerocancer.org/advocacy.